Hey everybody, Dylan Bowman here, one of the founders of Freetrail and the host of the Freetrail podcast. Thank you for watching our video podcast. A couple of things before we get started. Number one, please do join Freetrail Pro, our great community for trail runners from around the world. There's a lot of great perks involved in that membership, and we would love to have you on board. Number two, a big thank you to our sponsors here in the video podcast. We don't do real commercial breaks, so I just want to give them a major shout out on the front end here. We have some discount codes in the show notes that you can take advantage of. Number one, Speedland, of course, the makers of the GS Tam, the shoe that bears the Freetrail logo on it, and a product that we worked on to bring to market in the spring of 2023. Our other annual partner is Gnarly Nutrition, makers of fantastic training and racing nutritional supplements that will really help you on your trail journey. We always have a third partner on the show that rotates throughout the year. So depending on who it is now, you can find a link and a discount code in the show notes for that partner as well. But a big thank you to the sponsors who do make our podcast possible. Number three, last but not least, we would really appreciate it while you're here to smash the subscribe button on the Freetrail YouTube channel. You can also click the bell icon to get notifications whenever we post new content. We are working very hard to keep you inspired, informed, and entertained here in the great sport of trail running. Thank you so much. Enjoy the show.
Okay.
Cameron Haynes, you legend. Welcome to the Freetrail podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Dylan, it's great to be here. I followed you for a long time. I follow what you do. I got a lot of respect for just how good you are. And plus, you know, when Speedland said, hey, could you make a video and kind of talk about your journey? And they sent me what you did. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I cannot do what he just did. You're just so polished, so smooth, so articulate, so professional. And I'm like, guys, I'm a freaking some redneck bow hunter. So yeah, I mean, I like you intimidated me even from the get-go with Speedland. So yeah, it's an honor to be here.
The admiration is very much mutual. And that video that you're referencing was sort of a love song to Mount Tam. And your shoe is a celebration of Mount Pisgah. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that video is one of my favorite things that my good friend and business partner, Ryan Thrower, has ever created. So maybe we'll throw a link in the show notes for people who haven't seen it. But anyway.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, really excited to have you on the show. And as I prompted you, I always ask the same opening question here on the program that's added a fun, common element throughout all of our amazing guests. And so I have to pose it to you. And that question is, what makes you, you? What are your unique strengths and weaknesses as a athlete and as a human being? And maybe how do they show up in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have many strengths. So, like because I have a show too, as you know, and I talk to the outliers and people who are like the best in their field. Right. And to me, I'm trying to learn from people because I feel like I don't have like these natural talents. I'm not this gifted Olympic athlete or like a Courtney or, I've even had like intellectuals like Chris Williamson, and I'm just like, the only thing I offer is like, I can grind. I can keep hammering. That's the premise to what I do is like, I just don't quit. So over, I'm old as hell. Over this long of a life, if you just don't quit and keep putting in work, good things will eventually happen. So that's been the secret to my success is like no talent, but I guess I'm pretty disciplined and I just won't quit. So that's me.
Keep hammering the Cam Haynes auto lifestyle and philosophy. You mentioned Courtney DeWalter, of course. She is world famous and especially beloved among my audience here on this particular podcast. So I'd love to hear you talk about her a little bit because as we were just saying, she's not the type of person to brag about herself. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you two came to be connected, how your friendship has developed, and what, in your opinion, makes Courtney so special.
Man, I mean, so I didn't even really know who she was. We both ran the Moab 240, and I think this was in 2018. And Rogan was following me because he knew I was doing it, and it was a big test for me. I mean, 240 miles is a long ass way, right? So he was all excited to follow along. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be smart on this one. I'm going to go out and be, I'll always go out too fast and blow up and then just barely try to hang on. So I'm like, well, I'll try to be conservative this time. It's a long race and let's be smart about this. So I'm running And I'm getting these updates. I said, who's leading, who's doing this, who's doing that? And they say, well, this girl's out in front by, by a ways. I'm like, what do you mean a ways? Like, where is she? You're saying these updates, and she was like, I'm like, oh, there's no way. Something happened. Went the wrong way, did something. The tracker's messed up. I'm like, there's no way somebody could be up that far. Well, turns out, we didn't really, or I didn't know that much about Courtney at that time. Turns out she's just like the best to ever do it in the history of doing it. And she was way out there. She did crush. And so by the time I finished, I can't remember what I got, like maybe 11th I can't even remember what it was. But anyway, well back, right behind her. And she was just there with Kevin drinking beer and smiling and doing what she, it's kind of her routine now is she finishes like, way ahead of everybody else and chills out and is just like, is the ultimate cheerleader for the sport.
Yep.
And so that was my first introduction to Courtney. And I didn't know who she was, but at that, then, Rogan had followed along and then he asked her to be on the podcast because, she did this incredible thing, beat everybody by, God, I think it was 10 hours or 8 or 10 hours.
Big margin.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. And so anyway, that just kind of, I'm enamored with outliers, with people who just winners, right? Because I'm, like I said, I'm not that type. So I want to try to learn from people like that. So, kind of got a little bit, just like, God, I need to find out more about how is she so freaking good and what is she doing? And so then we just, correspondence, back and forth, and she loves just doing fun adventures and I love being in the mountains. And so since that time, we've run rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon together. I've went, stayed in Leadville and we've done, Mount Evans and Mount Massive and like 6 different 14,000-foot peaks. And so it's just, I don't know. I don't even really know how to quantify how special or how to verbalize how special she is, but just a one-on-one type person, and it's just incredible to see what she's been doing. And, it was here where we talked about, she came out and we ran 100K, before the summer and we did the podcast. And as we know, she doesn't like talking about herself. So I was trying to trick her into saying different things and she would never bite on it. But we did kind of talk about that. Hey, has anybody ever won the 3 big, the most famous ultra races in the world in the same season? And, I don't think anybody ever has. But we did talk about it. And then turns out she, of course, did it. And it's just, I love seeing people win. I love seeing history being made. And when it's somebody like Courtney doing it, it's just like, that feels right. That feels like those are the type of people who are supposed to be doing those type of things. Just incredible.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I'd love to point our listeners to both the podcast that you did with Courtney and also the video that you guys made of that 100K adventure run that you did around your home in Eugene. It was either before or after you guys recorded the podcast. And I think the one moment where Courtney's ever like celebrated her own achievements was when she nailed the balloon with the bow.
I know.
In your yard there. So anyway.
Oh, it was 101 yards. And she's like running around and you just can't, if you could bottle that type of energy and excitement, man, you'd be rich if you could sell it, She's so pure. Love her.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Cam, so let's talk about your experience and career in the sport. I went back and looked at your ultra sign up and it appears you did your first ultra marathon back in 2005, 18 years ago, way before trail running was cool. I know you originally started in the sport hoping to use running and endurance as a way of being a better bow hunter, which is of course kind of like the main focus of your life. So take us into the origin story there with trail running and how it's been supportive of your career as a bow hunter.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been in the mountains my whole life basically. And when you're back there and you got your whole camp on your back and you're doing like what I would call bivouac hunting. I wrote my first book. It's right here. It's called Backcountry Bowhunting. And that book was about basically just living in the mountains and hunting, whole camp on your back. You're not going back and forth to a base camp. You're just out there, right? And so I did it in the Eagle Cap Wilderness here in Oregon is where I started. It's the largest wilderness here in the state. And I realized quickly, if I got 50 pounds on my back for every step for 10 days, I got to be in freaking good shape, right? And so I had done, I think, my first marathon in, I think, 2002 or 2003. So I was 34 years old by the time I even did a marathon. And I did the Gorge Marathon and I got third in it. It's not like some stacked field, but, I did all right. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then somebody gave me this article. I think it was an Outside magazine, maybe, or I can't remember what magazine, but it was about Western States 100. And I was like, wait, what is people are running 100 miles? I had no idea. And then I'm like, okay, that seems, I didn't even know that people were doing this type of thing. So I thought, well, if I could run 30 some miles on the mountains, like 50K, man, I feel like I could do anything hunting. Right. And so this McDonald Forest 50K here in Corvallis, it's just north of me. There's a great ultra. It's an early ultra in the year. I think it's Mayish. And it's a tough one, 7,000 feet and 30 some miles. And so it's pretty good. It's muddy. Yeah. And I did it. And it was like, I was, could barely at the end, barely walk. It was like, I finished, I can't remember what I got, 5 hours, something. It was freaking hard. And I'm running this race and I'm coming to the finish. And I was about a mile from the finish. You go down to the shelter down there. And there's these guys coming back up the trail running opposite of me. And I'm like, they looked like runners. I'm like, God, what are those guys doing? So I get down, finally finish the race, finally got some soup and stomach settled down. You know how it gets. Yeah. And I said, the race director there, I said, I saw these four guys, they were running backwards on the course. What are those guys doing? They're like, oh, they're getting ready for Western. So they're doubling it today. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, so 62 miles? I said, yeah. And so it turns out it was like, there's a guy, some legends here in town, but John Tyser was one of them. And then Craig Thornley, he's from Eugene here. And so it was that group. There's four of them that were just really good ultra runners. And that was who was running backward. And now Craig's, of course, race director of Western States. But anyway, so that was kind of like where it started with me. I'm like, God, I didn't even know, freaking humans could do this shit. And here I'm like, can barely finish a 50K and these guys are going to be doing 100 miles. So that's where the seed was planted. Then that was the goal, because it felt like to me, like you weren't really, in my head, I'm not speaking for anybody else, you weren't really an ultra runner until you did a 100 miler. You know what I mean? That was like, yeah, they're ultras, but it's like the buckles and the real ultras are those 100-mile ones. So I was obsessed with, man, can I do that? And so that's where it started.
Amazing. Wow. What a great story. So I'm admittedly not super knowledgeable about the world of bow hunting, but I followed you for a long time also. And I think you were one of the first people to sort of take this athlete's approach to bow hunting, taking like a high performance lens to archery. And in that way, you've been a bit of a pioneer. I mean, you just mentioned that you realized that you needed to be fit in order to do this bivouac style hunting and carry all that stuff on your back for multiple days. But where did that insight come from to like make you think like, hey, I actually need to be an athlete? And also like if there's any other things like from your endurance world, being an ultra runner, that have carried over to make you a better bow hunter, I'd love to hear about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've been a pioneer as far as getting exposure to it, but back in the day, the mountain men type guys, they knew, I mean, if you're surviving out there, you can't be soft and overweight. And it's just like, you're not going to be at your best. So, but I got a lot of attention for it. And a lot of it was negative attention because the hunting community, they're like, I don't know if you've worked with people and be like, well, this is how we've always done it. So why would we change it? Right. Yep. So hunters, they didn't really want to, they weren't that excited about, oh, you got to run a marathon to kill an elk. Nobody's interested in doing that. Right. So I got pushed back there, and I wasn't the first to know that being in better shape in the mountains was a benefit, but I was the first, or one of the first, to get the attention it got. So yeah, it's I don't know. I've just learned. So I've always said the trail running helps my bow hunting, and bow hunting helps my trail running, because in a bow hunt, you might be out there for over a week. In a trail race, even 100 or 200, it's not going to be a week, right?
Yeah.
You can break it down into, if can I get to this day and get a 100-miler done, or if it's a 200, it's going to be a few days, but there's a finish line. There's no real finish line on the hunt. Mm-hmm. So to build that mental strength and to be able to break things down into smaller segments and just build confidence that I can still thrive when everything's against me, when the weather's against me, the mountain's against me, I'm out of food, I'm out of water. Because in ultra, sometimes that happens. Especially when I first started, I was not up on the fueling and the hydration. So I would just have to suck it up and get through and still perform. And on the hunt, that happens a lot, because if you're high on the mountain, the water's at the bottom, you're out because you might not have water. You still have to be able to hunt and make good decisions. So it's all kind of helped each other. And I've taken lessons I've learned in both disciplines to help the other one.
That's so cool. So I want to come around and talk about your new media entity, the Keep Hammering Collective, here in a bit. But I've been listening to your show since it started, and I noticed that you kept mentioning a guy named Roy. So I went and looked this guy up and read some things that you had written about your friend, whose name was Roy Roth. And it seems that he was a really important part of your story. So please introduce the audience to Roy Roth and what impact he had on you.
Yeah, Roy, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Roy, guaranteed. Where I grew up, there's a small little town outside of where I live now, and it kind of a logging community. A lot of people worked in the woods. Small high school, 24 people in my graduating class. But, after high school, I was always big in athletics, but after high school, I tried to play college football, wasn't good enough. Didn't have the money to stay and get good enough. So I was kind of lost and just kind of drinking. I still liked hunting, but I would go to the rock pit and drink beers and build fires and just do stupid shit, wreck trucks, go to the stupid clubs here, the bars. And that was kind of what I was doing. And it's like, it's not, you're not going to be achieving too many great things in life if that's what motivates you, or that's what your life entails. So Roy introduced me to bow hunting. Without bow hunting, who knows what I would be. But Roy was very faith-based. He's a Christian. I heard him cuss like one time. He said a joke with a cuss word in it, but he didn't drink, didn't do anything. He just very a good influence on me, and always believed in me, which I think running's probably the same way, or any field could be the same. When on your way up, you get a lot of people who doubt you or want to shoot down what you've done, or justify why you're successful and they're not, type thing. And especially in hunting, because it's a lot of men and it's a lot of egos. So I had a lot of detractors on the way up, and Roy was always the one who believed in me. We went to high school together. We hunted together. He knew what, the mistakes I've made, all the good, the bad, the ugly, everything about me. Right. And he still supported me. So me and Roy, we had the same motivation in the mountains, where it's like no obstacle is too great, no challenge too great, nothing we couldn't overcome. And so we were like, man, this team. And he moved to Alaska. I went to Alaska probably 30 times hunting. We'd hunted, grizzly, brown bear, sheep, moose, everything, and just had the best adventures. The bigger the adventure, the more the challenge, the happier we were. Right. So it's like finding somebody like that is really hard. Well, in 2015, he was on a sheep hunt and he fell and died. And it was, somebody that a fixture in my life and some like a pillar in my life. He always would never judge me, always supported me. I could tell him anything and he'd have great advice. He was tough. People respected him. He was a badass in the mountains, the best woodsman I've ever met in the mountains. And a dear friend. We loved each other. So when he died, it's like, man, it was a big hole. It was, and nobody can feel that, we knew each other for God. So he died when he was 49, 25 years. We'd been close. And so that's a hole that can't ever be filled. And it's just, I still, I got a picture of him there, there's a picture on this table of us. And it's like his legacy. I don't know. I don't really know how living and dying, how all this goes together, but I try to like do hunts that, and make decisions on hunts that he would, if he could look down and watch, he'd be like, still getting it done, still doing what we love.
By his example a little bit. It makes me want to ask you about mentorship and stuff now, because you're in your 50s now and you've established this massive platform for yourself. You're easily the most visible person probably globally in your community, I would guess. And so have the opportunity to sort of pay that forward. Do you do that? Is there anything that you do to sort of help carry Roy's legacy and nurture the next generation too?
Yeah, I mean, just today I asked Rogan if he knew anybody who wanted to go hunting, because there's a lot of people because now, where your meat sourced from has kind of been like a more popular thing, right? People are thinking about, wait, how, so this hamburger I'm eating, how did this animal live and die? And exactly. So hunting has kind of it's taken more popularity in that respect than just hunting, just to be a hunter. Now it's like, okay, I can get, wild meat from the mountains that nobody's ever touched but me. And that's a big draw to people. So I still love taking people and exposing new hunters to what I do. Last year, I took Kevin Costner's son, Caden, on his first ever deer hunt. He killed a buck here in Oregon. And that was a young man his dad's always off, working on Yellowstone, and he's got this big movie project coming out. So he's not home very often. So his son, was going to miss out on being a deer hunter. And so I took him out and got him his first buck. And I love stuff like that. With Rogan, that I took him on his first bow hunt. So it's like, it's not so much kids. Sometimes it's kids, like with Kevin Costner's son, but sometimes it's adults who just haven't been exposed to hunting. Yeah. And they see it and they might follow me and they're like, I have no idea even where to start. I don't know anything about anything. And so I try to be a resource for people like that when I can. There's way more people out there like that I could help, but I try to help when I can and share what I know. Yeah. Share the things that have changed your life with others. It's a fantastic way to be of service. You just touched on something that I wanted to talk about with you. Again, I'm pretty ignorant about hunting. I've never been hunting in my life, but I know that conservation element is really important, especially with people like you who are really serious about it. And having followed you and Steve Ranella and people like that for a while, it's clear that there's like a deep passion for the land and for the animals, but like non-hunters may not appreciate that. So maybe if you could expand a little bit on that conservation ethos in the community, I think people would love to hear. Yeah, it's and I'll say that I've changed a little bit from when I first started hunting. I just liked hunting, and the question in that small little town I lived in, well, did you get your buck this year? And so it was just like, it's pretty easy. It's like success, failure. Yeah, I got a buck, got a good one, whatever. And that's pretty much hunting. Well, now I see that it's a hunting money, hunting dollars for license and tags, and just the money we put in is what people goes into conservation of these lands and animals. So that all the hunting money for licenses and tags helps habitat, helps. I killed a sheep a couple years ago in Colorado. Well, this herd was doing so good in this area, they took 15 sheep out of the herd that I killed a ram out of, and they started a new. They basically transferred them to a new area and started a new herd of sheep, and now they're thriving. So that all happens because of hunting money. And if we want the habitat to be protected, if we want the animals to be protected, it sounds weird that, well, oh, so you kill animals and that helps the animal, but it does. It's just how it works. The North American wildlife model is geared around hunting and putting value on animals. And that money then in turn goes to help the species as a whole, or even species that are struggling, even landlocking some areas to protect certain animals that could be endangered. But if you look at like big game animals in the last 100 years, elk, deer, bear, turkeys, just the 4 big ones that people hunt a lot. There's more of them now than there was at the turn of the 20th century. So over 100 years ago, there's more animals now. And that's following the North American wildlife model, which is funded by hunters. So, and I just know that hunters in general, because I've been this guy, have a greater respect, in my opinion, for life and death of an animal, or even just life in general. The death threats I get are from anti-hunters or from animal rights activists that, to me, they say stuff like that, like, you know, I want to put your daughter's head on the wall like you do those animals, which is what they've said to me before. To me, that's somebody who doesn't understand life and death. Mm-hmm. To wish death on somebody you don't know's family means I don't think you get what life and death really is, because a hunter would never do that. A hunter who has killed an animal and knows what it takes to survive, because there's blood on our hands from getting that kill and bringing that meat home and providing for our family. We don't throw out death threats like randomly, because we've seen death and we know it's the gravity of it. Somebody who's never been exposed to that, those are the ones who make these crazy statements. So to me, as a hunter, it's not only conservation and the care of the animals and the land and the respect for what we do, but it's also understanding a full breadth of life and death and how everything goes together.
That's really interesting. So in some ways, your experience as a bow hunter helps you better understand your own mortality. Is that right?
I think so. I mean, nowadays I'm older. I don't enjoy seeing an animal die. I mean, it's what I do. I'm a bow hunter. I understand for any human to survive, there's going to be death. And I don't care if you're vegan, vegetarian, for you to survive, you're causing death. That's just how it works. I mean, you can eat wheat bread. Every time that wheat field is harvested, there's tons of animals getting killed by the agricultural machines that go through there. You can watch any field that's been harvested. There's buzzards circling all around it because of all the death associated with that. So yeah, you're not eating meat, but who's to say that a deer's life or an elk's life isn't more important than the rodent or the rabbit or the deer fawn that was hiding that got chopped up with the combine? I mean, a life is a life, right? So yes, your existence causes death. Hunters accept that existence and that mortality, and they understand that, yeah, I've seen death, and it's not easy. It's not a comfortable thing to watch, but it does give you greater appreciation for this gift of life that we have and what it takes to sustain it.
Yeah, really interesting. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, I see this analog, and correct me if I'm wrong, between trail running and bow hunting culturally too, in that bow hunting as a subculture, sort of differentiated from rifle hunters. It feels like a prideful identity, same with trail runners, right? Like when you're a trail runner, you feel like it's a core part of who you are. It's sort of a pseudo religious designation, and something that like is really special to and a central part of our lives. Am I touching on something there? Like what makes bow hunting such a unique and special sort of subculture within, outdoorsmanship?
I think to me, the similarities between the two disciplines are it takes so much commitment to be good. To be a good bow hunter I mean, I shoot my bow every day. I got to be dedicated to it. I got to know the animals, their habitat, their behavior. I got to be able to read that. I got to be able to read the wind. It's like takes so much to be successful. No different to trail running. If you're going to go and run even a 50K, man, you got to be ready, right? So it takes that. It's not just like, I mean, it'd be hard to go out and just sign up on a whim and do a 100-miler, right? But you can do a marathon. You can do a road running marathon like that. You got 7-8 hours is usually the cutoff on a marathon. You can get that done with no training. To be a good 100-miler, it's got to be almost your life. Your whole focus of life is that, and that's bow hunting. So to me, it elevates what we do. So running is a discipline, hunting is a discipline. Trail running is another level up from road running, just like bow hunting is another level up from rifle hunting. To me, that's a parallel, and that's why they're special. They just take so much, I feel like, to be good, so much more dedication and commitment to it. And a lot of times there's not this big reward. It's not like a LeBron James where he's, a slam dunk and the crowd goes crazy and his endorsements pay and he's on, in commercials. That's nobody's celebrating in the mountains. I mean, you might have a few people at the end of a big ultra, but usually not the ones I do. There's usually like 5 people at the end. And in bow hunting, same thing. It's you. The arena is the mountains. And so you do it for you. You do it for a more pure purpose is what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
With both.
So I want to talk about your career. And one of my favorite podcasts that you've done was with Kip Fulks, who was one of the co-founders of Under Armour and someone who also seems like he's been a good friend and a positive influence over a long period of time. So to start this discussion about how you've built this platform, maybe talk a little bit about Kip Fulks and the things that you guys worked on at Under Armour and how that maybe changed the trajectory of your career.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Kip, he's a hunter. So that helped, I think Under Armour was the first major athletic brand that actually embraced hunting and kind of came up with their whole a hunting line. It was high-end performance products. And they came up with the slogan, athletes hunt. And so that was a new thing. And that was when Kip was there. And I was like, yes, I love that. I identified with that because I think, I don't know if part of it was, my dad was a big athlete, a great track and field coach, and he never hunted. So I don't know if it was like, went back to, maybe this is what my dad would approve of more as being athletic at what I do. So it was kind of when they came up with that athlete's hunt that was built, I guess, around what I do in some respects, it like gave a stamp of approval for it. And not only in the community, but in my life. And so that was exciting. Kip was passionate. We still hunt. We just got done hunting together in Arizona, and he's still been a great friend. He's since left Under Armour, but man, we had so much momentum going at that time where the Under Armour outdoor brand was blowing up. And it was kind of a cool brand. And it was cool that a performance apparel line, because Under Armour had these sweet commercials. We must protect this house, that whole thing. It was like they were kicking ass. Yeah. And we were kind of riding that wave, and that was pretty fun.
So cool. And you just mentioned athletes hunt, and we talked about at the beginning of the conversation how you bring this athlete's mindset, this high performance lens to hunting. And you mentioned also that you were a bit of a pioneer on kind of the storytelling front. So I wanted to ask you about that too, because at least from my perspective, you were early in this new wave of like athlete meets creator. Like, I'm sure you would never call yourself an influencer. And to me, you're like, not anti-influencer, but like in some ways you pioneered that model too, of like just sharing your story. You've got your books behind you there on the wall. So I'd love to hear where that insight came from for you too, because like now a lot of people, myself included, have sort of adopted a similar model within various different communities, whether it's sports or business or anything. So anyway, anything you want to say about like the storytelling element and how it's, sort of come naturally to you over time and how it's supported your career?
Yeah, I mean, well, social media changed everything because when I first started writing, I used to have to rely on an editor or a TV producer to give me an opportunity. And if, and, there was egos involved in that, just like everything else. And so I've had people who just didn't like me or I don't know if they were not threatened, but whatever, just didn't like my messaging. So I just wouldn't get opportunity. Well, and I would be frustrated because I'm like, I can write as good as this guy. I can hunt as good as this guy. Just these guys won't give me a chance. So finally, when social media came in, I was like, holy shit, I don't need anybody. I can put out whatever, I can say whatever I want. And that was like all I'd been waiting for forever. And I felt like I was kind of biting my tongue, like trying to make people happy and do what the industry had been doing forever because I was more accepted and kind of watered down what I wanted to say. Well, when Facebook came on at first, I think it was like 2008. I was like, God, I can reach the people myself and say whatever I want and say why this is important to me and how I feel about it. And I don't have to check in with anybody. And so it just kind of exploded from there. And it's not like I'm, Kim Kardashian, but I got quite a few people for hunting, that follow me. And it's just because I just share what's important to me, share what I love. I don't really water anything down, love it or hate it. This is what motivates me. And this is why I do what I do. And it's like that. And I hate the fact that being authentic is even a thing now. Cause I've said this before that why should we have to say, oh, you're authentic? It's like, well, no shit. That's how everybody should be. Right. And so but it gave you a chance to like be authentic and get that message out. And that's what's resonating with people because people are so used to this curated stuff. And it's like, I don't really do that too much. I just say what I want. And it's like nowadays, this has been the perfect timing for me. And I've seen a lot of people be successful following that, just basically following their heart or what's on their mind. And so it's good in that regard. I mean, there's bad with that too. There's people who take it too far, but for me, it's been good. And I don't think you can ever go wrong with saying why you're passionate about something and why it's important to you and why you love it and the challenges associated with it, because everybody can identify with that. So it's been good for me having social media blow up like it has.
Yeah. So I think this is a good time to talk about the day job that you've kept for your entire hunting and running career, even as you've led to international stardom. You recently left that job to go all in on a new project, the Keep Hammering Collective. And I want to talk about that in a sec. But before we get to it, tell the people what you did for a living and what gave you the feeling that now was the right time to embrace new opportunities.
Well, I never had the feeling now is the right time. So I kind of even along this way, I've been like, God, I basically quit the best job I've ever had in my life. Right. I mean, a job like I had is not a job somebody like me quits because I didn't graduate from college. I came from the bottom up, construction, got on the construction crew. I've always been pretty good with numbers. Somehow earned a position to be the buyer for the local water and power company. So I was a buyer for 20 years, did contracts and bids. And, it's just like, kept the construction guys, with the materials they needed, took pride in that, took pride in making, everybody wants to make a difference, right? It's really hard to make a difference on a construction crew when you're just one guy, especially when you're one of the lower guys. So finally I was up where I could make a difference and like see these big returns, like, oh, I did this bid and saved this much for the company. And so that felt good. And then after a while, I'd been doing all the side stuff with the hunting and the running and doing, that whole thing. But my obligation was to my family and providing for them. I got 3 kids and, wife, and they rely on me. Yep. So I'm like, no, this is what I got to do. I got to do it all. I got to do this job. I got to train at night. I got to, be the best I can be bow hunting and do it all. And so sleep would sacrifice a lot. But I'm like, for someone like me, this is what you got to do. And so then I was superintendent for 6 years, and I ran the construction crews and some of the engineering guys, and we kicked ass. We were doing big jobs over $200,000 in the state of Oregon. You have to show that you're the least cost option. So you got to, as we're a public agency, we still had to be the least cost out of even contractors. So the state will audit that. And if a public agency, you generally isn't like contractors have an advantage usually. But not for us. The guys kicked ass. And so I had a lot of pride in like, hey, we were doing these, $1 to $2 million jobs, least cost, saving the ratepayers. And that was fun. The guys worked hard for me. And I loved it. It was like a little adrenaline rush for me. It's like, I wasn't doing the work, but I wasn't putting the pipe in the ground. But if the guys believed in me and I believed in them and we kicked ass, we were making a difference. And that felt pretty good. So to quit that job, this is a long answer to this question, but to quit that job was a big one for me because, I'm making shit. Like I said, for me, I like 120,000 a year, something like that. I'm like, I don't deserve to make this type of money. And then to walk away from it seemed dumb, but I did it. Joe kept saying, oh, if you did the podcast, you would, people would love it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not that good at talking. So I don't know why they would love it. Maybe I
Quit
can
a
get some cool
superintendent job to be a podcaster? Come on, Rogan.
Yeah. I know.
I'm
exactly.
No Spotify deal right now, buddy.
Yeah. I know. He's the one, negotiating his big money deals. And he's the one who loves to freaking talk forever. Yeah. I like to just go run and shoot my bow. I'm not that great at conversation. But anyway, I did it. So it's the brand, the Keep Hammer Collective brand, so to speak, it's just been, it's crazy. It's crazy how good it's been going. The merchandise, the sponsors,
So sketch out the outline for those who are unfamiliar. I've been keeping up with it, but you've got a couple of different formats that you're using, and it seems like a pretty cool new media property that has a lot of potential to continue to grow in future years. So maybe tell us about, sketch the outline of it and tell us kind of goals for the future, stuff like that.
Yeah. So, the big thing is I want to talk to outliers. I want people, because I always say, well, I'm just a normal guy and normal people like me can't talk to the best in the world at what they do. Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, I've been given this platform and given this opportunity, and these outliers, either I trick them or however I get them here, they're sitting here, right? So to me, it's an outlet for people like me, normal people, to learn from legends. That's been the whole premise. So I can word things and wonder things and ask questions from some 9-to-5 dipshit perspective that I am. And a lot of people are 9-to-5 guys. So it's like they're going to identify with that message. So I ask questions that I think that other people would want to know about. And it's been good. So I have the people out. So just in general, I have the people out. We do a lift, run, shoot day, which is we lift weights here in my gym. We shoot a bow. Some of them have never shot a bow. And then we run the mountain. So that's it. That's a day. Sometimes we do it all in one day if they have a short time availability. And then after that, we do the regular podcast just like this, but they'd sit right here. And so to me, it works well because I'm not Joe. I can't form this connection and ask these awesome questions right out of the get-go. I do better when I know the person, when we've struggled a little bit, when we've, went out there and, it's like you form this connection when you do hard things with people, right? Or you build trust. If I'm showing them how to shoot a bow, they inherently will trust what I say. So those type of little triggers help a normal conversation because we went through the fire yesterday together. We did the same. We did this long run. We climbed this mountain. We shot this bow. We pushed our limits in the gym. There's an unspoken connection. Yeah. And that helps my conversation with people. Yeah. Joe doesn't have to do that. I do. I don't have to, but I have in my head that it helps me. So that's how it works. It's like we do a lifter and shoot, then we do a podcast, two separate things.
Yeah. It makes me want to circle back to what you said at the very beginning about what makes you you, and that you've just sort of repeated here, of just like your discipline and your work ethic and not being inherently talented, but you can grind and you can suffer. And it's something that I very much identify with myself. In fact, I was on somebody else's podcast recently and they turned that question around on me, that I always ask everybody, what makes you you? And I answered in exactly the same way. I'm just good at suffering. And that that's been obviously very valuable in my career as a pro athlete, but it's even more valuable, I think, in building our business too, because we have like a small little media entity too. I'm wondering maybe where that discipline comes from, and whether or not you've had to flex that muscle in this new entrepreneurial mission as well. You know, does that suffering, does that grinding carry over into building something new from scratch now that you're not a 9-to-5 dipshit anymore?
It is. Where I've struggled is, and I struggled leading people all the time like this, because not everybody's going to want it to the same level you want it. You know what I mean? And so when it motivates me every day, and it's like, I have probably like 10 people that work for me, and I've had more. I've like had to make changes because it's really hard for me to be, I don't know. I mean, I've been so used to pushing so hard, and I had this problem at my other job too. I mean, I had never called in sick at any job since I was 19. I had my first job, and I've never called in sick in my entire life. So it's like, I have a hard time when people, they call and they like are sounding sick. I don't know if they're like got the acting a little bit, but I just like have the hardest time hearing that. So in like a business like this where it's my thing, man, I'm just like, compassion. Sometimes I need to really work on compassion. It's been the hardest thing for me.
Exactly.
It makes it hard for me to not, I mean, yeah, just be more understanding and understand that not everybody's going to want everything like I want it. You know what I mean? That's been a challenge. But I do have some great people who, yeah, they're probably not a psycho like me, but they get it. They get me. And they know that when I fly off the handle, oh, that's just Cam. They know that if we weather the storm, it's going to be good. But yeah, so it's you know, I feel pressure because I left a good job, and it's like I can't really fail. I don't feel like, because I mean, I can't. I'm betting on myself. I left a job I could have retired at, and it's like, I got to make this work. Yeah. And so it's been hard. I mean, but thank God. I mean, we're putting out, people like to listen, and it's not because of me, it's because of the guests, but people like to listen. They like to see the lift, run, shoot. So it has some momentum, and the sponsors have noticed that. And so, I mean, it's been successful. It's
so funny. I just read Anthony Bourdain's famous book, Kitchen Confidential, where he talks about how anathema it is for chefs and cooks to call in sick, and how it's like was very much a violation of his trust as the executive chef. And I found myself going along totally, and just like sometimes the hardest part is developing that compassion and understanding that, you know, not everybody wants it as bad as you or can suffer as hard as you all the time. So anyway.
Well, I put that up the other day about some clips, you know, one of the media guys took off here and they made me a reel, and it was about that. And then so many people were so upset about, you know, because all I said was like, well, the company doesn't care why you're calling in sick. All they know is that now your work somebody else has to do, or it's not getting done. So they don't really care about whatever excuse, valid, invalid. It doesn't matter. You're not there. And I was always the guy that, no, I'm going to be here every single time. And when you're that guy, you get other opportunities, because whoever your boss is like, well, this guy's probably better, but who knows if he's going to be here.
Reliable, dependable.
Yeah, can't. Right. And so people are like, well, the company, they replace you in a day after you die. So why would you have that loyalty to them? I'm like, because that's what's going to set me apart. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm in this position that I don't deserve anyway.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm sitting right here in a position I don't deserve, because I just keep fucking putting in the work.
I love it, Cam. Keep hammering. All right. So let's talk about your new shoe and the relationship with Speedland. But first, introduce the audience to Mount Pisgah, because I think this is important and it's in line with our conversation about suffering. So tell us about Mount Pisgah and the suffering you've subjected yourself to on its flanks.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's just a local little mountain. It's not even a mountain, but it's called Mount Pisgah. I didn't name it, so I got to call it a mountain. But it's not really a mountain. It's only it's 1,500 feet at the top. You start at like 400 feet, so it's probably 1,100 feet of gain in a mile and a half. Or you can do long loops, like I've done with other people up there. But it's just kind of my daily. Like I go, and when I had my normal job, I could run over there at lunch, get 1,000 feet for lunch on a climb, and do like 5 miles or something, and get my workout in. So that's been my go-to, because it was 10 minutes from my job. And so I just that's where I take people. There's a monument up top that was, it's a memorial to Ken Kesey's son, Jed Kesey, who died. He was an Oregon wrestler and he died in a car accident. But Ken Kesey wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Anyway.
And sometimes a great notion, 2 great pieces of American literature. And of course, sometimes a great notion is a great piece of Oregon literature too.
Right. So there's that local connection to that monument up top there, and it's metal and it's cool. And it's just like, that's just a summit marker, right? So you get up there, everybody knows it now. And that's where I take the guests, unless we go to the real mountains up the river. But it's a good, everybody kind of knows it now because I've posted so much about it. So that's been my daily run, essentially. And then this Speedland shoe that I'm wearing it right now, but it's got, I think it's called the PGH. Yeah. So short for Pisgah. It's got a silhouette of me on top there on the insole, but yeah, just a cool, it's been good. The Speedland guys, Dave and Kevin are just, they were at Under Armour when I was there. They know all about me.
So talk about that connection. Like, how did the partnership come to be? Because this is something that I actually don't know. I haven't talked to Dave and Kevin about this personally. So I'd love to hear you talk about, how the opportunity arose and what made you excited to partner with the brand to create your own product.
It was, I left Under Armour. They had kind of grown, or I don't know what, but lost some momentum. Kip left. So the outdoor community or outdoor division there kind of lost a little momentum, I thought. And they had hired out to like an agency to do their athlete thing. And I'm like, okay, these guys don't even work in Under Armour. Whatever. Maybe it's time for me to go. Right. And it seems like we had peaked in the outdoor. And now it seemed like once business kind of, I'm not saying they're struggling, but it's not blowing up like it was. So then, some fat gets cut. That's kind of, I thought maybe the outdoor division is going to be cut. So I'm like, well, maybe it's time for me to move on. And they did my first Keep Hammering shoe, which is a really good shoe. I liked it, but I was just like, I guess it's time to move on. So I left. This was like maybe 2 years ago now. And I was just like, well, let me see what other shoes are out there. I've only been wearing Under Armour forever. And so I just started wearing all these other shoes and I was testing them out. And, it would have been, it's hard. The running community is like, oh man, it's so good. But, some small town redneck bow hunter is not like what most trail runners are, right? The pretty green group, liberal green. And I don't know, no problem with that. I love everybody. I mean,
yeah.
Courtney seems kind of like a hippie a little bit and I love her, but, the guys at Speedland, they're like, hey, could we get you it was your shoe. Yeah. Could we get you some of your, well, they sent the other ones too. And I can't do the zero drop or the, whatever those are. It's like my body's so beat up. I need cushion. So the first ones, I can't remember what they're called. I didn't really like those, but your shoe I loved it. It was the orange shoe and the had your logo and stuff on there. And I ran in those. I'm like, warm in a race. And I'm like, God dang, these things give good traction. They, your feet swell, as you know, at the end of ultras. And so like the bows are really good for loosening the tension. So your feet, shoes getting tighter in there. It just seemed like a perfect shoe. And I liked everything about it then. But the key is they know me. And it was like bow hunting wasn't this elephant in the room that like, God, how are we going to get by this thing? And so they were like, no, we know what you do and why you do it and all about it. And so that was, they accepted me for who I am, I guess is the good way to say it. And I said, yeah, I like the shoe because I ran in yours. And they asked if I wanted to come up with what do they call that? Not the collaboration. The commission. Yeah, the commission. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And, the blood thing was like a little, I know that even some people didn't really get the blood thing. It's like, oh, is that
so talk about that. I wanted you to expand on that because I think it's important, what it represents. So, the philosophy behind it, I think is relevant.
Yeah.
Especially as it pertains to a lot of domains of life.
Yeah. It's, if you didn't hear the explanation, it'd be like, oh, is this because he murders animals and that's blood from murdering stuff? And it's like, that has nothing to do with it. I used to have this column talking about bow hunting and a very popular bow magazine that I called it. It was, the name of the column was Bleed, and bleed mean sometimes you got to bleed to achieve your goals, right? It's going to take a little blood. It's like, whether it's blisters, whether it's just fighting through brush, whether it's, falling and picking yourself up and having some blood coming out somewhere. Sometimes you're going to have to bleed to do it. Right. And so that's all the symbolism of the shoe means, is that blood is a symbol of sacrifice to me. That I've been in a lot of races. I've been on a lot of hunts where at the end of it, my own blood is what's been spilled. And that's okay. Sometimes that's what it takes. If the goal is lofty enough and hard enough, you might have to bleed to get it done. So that's what the blood on the shoe represents, is just sacrifice.
Yeah, I love it. So as we wind down here, Cam, it makes me want to ask you about lift, run, shoot. And I love how you also have t-shirts that say must be nice. And it sort of goes back to our conversation about just discipline, hard work, showing up, but just sort of like the value of ritual and routine and consistency in life. I'd love to hear you just kind of contemplate that here publicly before we wind down. And how it pertains to this lift, run, shoot lifestyle that you have.
Well, the lift, run, shoot is just a discipline. It's like, that's what I feel like I have to do every day. I have to put in that work if I'm going to continue to hold this position. I don't know what this position is. It's kind of a position of influence, I guess, even though we don't want to say influencer, but it's a position that people would like to take from me. I mean, because it's I have an opportunity for this. So if I think about the shoe, even like, if I was a badass runner, say an Olympic level runner, they don't have their own shoe. So part of me is like, I don't freaking deserve my own shoe, right? And if I was them, I'd be like, who is this guy? What, he's got his own shoe? Why? What the hell has he done? You saw my ultra running sign up or whatever thing. It's like been okay. It's like not winning a bunch of ultras. I did beat Craig Thornley one time in a 10-mile run. That's been I won this race. We had this endurance weekend up in Oak Ridge, and it was like a 5 mile straight up. That was one race. 5 miles straight down is another race. A 10-mile loop that somehow I won, but I think he got second. So it's like that day I ran good. And then a 50K, which I got lost and ran like 5 miles further. But anyway, I'm not like this. I'm not an elite ultra runner. I do okay for a regular person, right? So if I was a pro, I'd be like, why the fuck does this guy have his own shoe? What is this about? So to me, if I'm going to be in this position, man, I got to put in work, because that's the only thing that separated me. It hasn't been my achievements. I didn't go to the Olympic Games. I didn't qualify for the Olympic trials. So what the hell? I got to work. I got to be the most disciplined person that people know. And I've always said, if you're not the hardest working person, you're not working hard enough. I have to outwork everybody. And that's where I have a little issue with Courtney, because she probably outworks my ass, and she won't even say how many miles she runs, but I know it's a lot. I know. I mean, I'll be like trying to trick her into telling me. And I seriously think she runs 150 miles a week, but she'll say like 100 or something like just a little more palatable for people. But I think she puts in a bunch of work. And so I have some catching up to do there. But my premise is lift, run, shoot. I got to work every day if I'm gonna reap these rewards that I've been given. I got to earn it.
Yeah,
that's what it's about.
I so identify with that too. You know, one of the themes of this conversation now is just sort of like feeling like you don't deserve things or being fearful of losing things, and I very much feel like that myself with everything.
But you did good at Hard Rock, didn't you? I mean,
a couple years ago.
yeah. I mean, you kicked ass there.
Yeah. No, I had a good career, but like you know, I've never been a talented athlete. I always just worked hard. I was consistent. I did the little things. Similarly now with Freetrail, you know, I feel like we've had so many headwinds, bootstrapped the business, spent my life savings on it to try and make it a thing. And like, I can't fail, you know, and I'm afraid of failing. And that's why, you know, you gotta grind every day. Cam, it's been so fun to talk to you, buddy. It's just, I hope to get you to, I hope to convince you to come run our race in Oregon in the spring in Gorge Waterfalls. But later. But
that looks like a tough one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. It'll prepare you for a nice late spring hunt at some point. But anyway, we can talk about that some other time. I have a traditional closing question that I ask everyone to, Cam, and that is just, who is one person that you admire? Can be inside or outside of sport, living or dead, and why is it that you admire that person?
I mean, you know, like I said, maybe I could list two, but Roy, he's not with us anymore, but man, again, I wouldn't be here without him, without his influence, without his guidance. You know, I just made a lot of mistakes in life. I don't know. I needed somebody like him to keep me on track and to believe in me, because I always felt like, you know, I was against everybody, but he was the one guy who I didn't have to be against. And it's been hard without him, but man, we had definitely a good run. I miss him every day, but he's been one. And then I know we talked about her a lot, but Courtney's like, just the way I don't know, it's so incredible to see what she can do. And I feel sometimes I get worried because she pushes so hard. I've seen her push really hard, like when she was doing that Colorado trail. And I do get worried that she pushes so damn hard, but it's like, how can you not respect somebody who gives absolutely everything they have to achieve whatever goal it is, and to do things that's never been done in history. So her work ethic and her attitude about it. And, you know, I wish she wasn't so humble. I'd love to see her talk a little shit up there, talk some smack, but
or at least just like tell us what makes you so good. You know, that's
I know,
better left secret, I guess. She'll tell us when she retires. She doesn't need to.
I doubt it. I doubt if she will, but yeah. So anyway, I'd say her. She motivates me a lot these days.
Sweet. Well, Cam, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Congratulations on the release of the new shoe. Any big projects coming up? Are you doing Moab 240 this weekend, or any big?
No, I'm a little banged up. I just got back from, you know, a whole month of hunting and packing meat and being in the mountains. So I'm a little bit banged up. I've just been doing massage and a little bit easy runs, but yeah, I don't have a race planned. I don't think there's a race here called the Frozen Trail Ultra on Pisgah. I usually do that in December. Goggins came out and did that with me one time, but that's probably the only thing I'll be doing coming up. Just trying to heal up a little bit. How about you?
No plans, buddy. No plans.
No,
I'm also in a recovery phase, but anyway, yeah, I'm trying to build back myself. So I'm going to consume some of your podcasts to get myself inspired to get the discipline and get the hard work going again. But anyway, Cam, appreciate you for coming on the show and hope we can catch up again soon.
Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate you too.